Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be talking through my February TBR. And this one, I had originally intended this to be my TBR for January, but I thought that I would try to take it a little bit easy at the beginning of the year and not set myself a really strict TBR that I had to absolutely stick to, because the end of last year was rough and I thought, okay, I don't want to put too much pressure on myself in the first month. So I planned a special TBR for February and I am very excited about it. For anybody who's been following along the channel for a while, you might remember that last January, so the first month of 2023, I had a special TBR where my friend Alan from the Library of Alexandria picked a bunch of books for me to read. And then at the end of the month, we got together to talk about them, to see how much I liked them. And it was really successful. I loved almost all of the books that he picked, and I had a really great time doing that live show with him, discussing the books with him, and I ended up with a couple of new favorite books for the entire year. So it was a really great experience. And I wanted to do something similar this year, and so I just put a general call out on the Discord and said, this was a really fun time. If anybody else wants to pick some books for me in February, then I would be happy to read them. And Kyle and Jake both decided to pick books out for me, and I will have both their channels linked in the video here. And I presume that we are going to do a chat about this at the end of the month. I haven't actually confirmed that with them, but I'm assuming that we will. We want to discuss them. Hopefully they're excited for me to read them, and I am hopeful that I will enjoy these books as much as I did the ones from Alan's last year. So this is a little bit of a shorter TBR because I think there are some pretty lengthy books on here. And I do have one carryover book. So spoiler, I guess, for my wrap up, my January wrap up, that's going to come in a couple of days, but I did not get to finish Ship of Destiny in January, which is a chunky book to have to add on to my February TBR, but I know that both Kyle and Jake will be happy that I'm reading this book, so hopefully they won't scold me too much for letting it creep over into February. But I'm enjoying Ship of Destiny, which is the final book to the Live Ship Traders series, a lot so far. I'm only about 100 pages in, so that's like, what, an eighth of the book? I think it's an 800-page book, the edition that I have, so it's good so far, but definitely in Robin Hobb style is building. It's taking a little bit to build that momentum, which I always enjoy. But for the books that are specifically for this TBR, I will first talk about the audiobook that I'm going to be listening to this month, because I have already started it. I ran out of things to listen to in January, and the audiobook that I had selected for February was pretty long. So I thought, well, you know what? I can just start it in January, and that will mean that I'm going to have time to actually get through it in the month. And that audiobook is Empire in Black and Gold by Adrian Tchaikovsky. So this is one of the choices by Jake and Kyle, and a book that I'm very excited to read. I have been enjoying my time with Adrian Tchaikovsky. I've done a couple of videos about his books. I've talked about his books in various different videos. One about fantasy authors who have a lot of versatility, and he is just an author that can always manage to surprise me. There are some common themes that show up in lots of his books. So he does enjoy insects. I'm assuming he must be a fan of bugs in real life, which is cool because I too am a fan of bugs in real life, and a lot of his books involve insects or reimagining of evolution and how that might impact people and insects. But this book, the Empire in Black and Gold, is the first book in the Shadow of the Apt series, and it is actually about a society of humanoid creatures, I guess, that they call each other humans, but they have insect ancestors and they're able to utilize the gifts or the powers from various insects. So they call each other kindin. So instead of being different races, they're different kindin. And so we have beetle kindin, we have mantis kindin, they're dragonfly kindin, ant kindin, and they all have different powers that relate to those specific insects. And the premise of this book is that there is an empire of wasps that is slowly taking over what the characters refer to as the uncivilized part of the world. And I'm guessing that we're going to get some more history, some more information about this part of the world, and maybe some of the prejudice that leads them to refer to it as such. But the main characters of the story are living in what they believe to be the civilized part of the world, where there is engineering and progress and science, and there is this empire of wasps that has been kind of like slowly encroaching. And so we have one of our main characters who has lived through the occupation of one of these outlying cities by the Wasp Empire, and he has been spending the last like 20 years of his life trying to warn the the city, or I guess like this center of progress, that the wasps are coming and that the wasps are going to invade, and nobody believes him. And then we have the kind of younger generation that he is mentoring, and they are starting to realize or recognize that this older man was right, and that there's probably more to fear from the wasps than anybody had ever considered. And so that is the setup for the book. I am not super far into it. I think I'm maybe 10 chapters in. I think there's like 13 hours or something left to go on the audiobook. And I usually listen to that when I'm walking, and I walk for about an hour a day. So it's going to take, you know, a couple of weeks for me to get through the rest of that. But so far the narration is excellent. I'm really glad that I decided to make this one my audiobook selection. And the story is really good. Like, the first chapter was so compelling and so interesting, and I am really excited to listen to the rest of it. So that is number 1 on the list for the month. 2 of the books I have picked up from the library. I'm hoping I can get a couple more from the library, but I decided to go with just a couple at a time. I'll just grab them. So the first one is, well, I have the entire book, but there's just one novella from this book. So this is Arcanum Unbounded by Brandon Sanderson. And the novella that I'm going to be reading from this is The Emperor's Soul, which I honestly am not sure what it's about. I hear people, the one novella that I hear people talk about a lot is the one about pancakes, which I don't think this one is, because I think that one's related to the Stormlight Archive, and I haven't read the Stormlight Archive, so I'm assuming that Kyle and Jake wouldn't tell me to read a novella that was directly linked to that, or maybe it's a prequel, or just like, I don't know, tangentially related. But I am going to be reading The Emperor's Soul. I think both Kyle and Jake want to find a piece of writing by Brandon Sanderson that I am going to really love, and they figure that maybe this is their best bet. And I also told them if they were going to put a bunch of chunky books on this TBR, they had to put something short, and so a Brandon Sanderson novella was what they had grabbed for that. Up next, we have the first of 2 books in a duology that I'm going to be reading, and that is Sailing to Sarantium. So this is book 1 of the Sarantine Mosaic by Guy Gavriel Kay, and it obviously would not be a TBR put together by Jake if there was not a selection by Guy Gavriel Kay. So when he was asking me about if there were any limitations or guidelines to follow when putting this TBR together, I said, well, you know, not 800-page books. And he was like, okay, but what if there's 2 400-page books and then also some long books? I was like, okay, fine. So my plan is to read both of these books this month. I am definitely going to read the first one. Obviously, it's going to be one of the first books that I read because I already have it from the library. Then I'm probably going to read the rest of the TBR and maybe save book 2 for the end of the month, because if one is going to kind of like bleed a little bit over, better for it to be the second one in a duology than to not be able to get to one of the other selections. But I don't have a great idea about what this one is about. It's Guy Gavriel Kay, so I'm assuming it is going to be historical fantasy of some sort. It's called the Sarantine Mosaic. I think I remember when I was looking it over, just like in my travels along, looking at Guy Gavriel Kay's bibliography, I think it might have something to do with stained glass. I know he always works different types of art into his books, whether it's poetry or music or those are the 2 big ones that I can think of from like Tagana and Under Heaven. But he always has these art, and the cultural impact of art always plays a really big role in his stories and his world building. And so I think that this one involves stained glass, or the construction of stained glass windows maybe, but I could be wrong. I am, however, very much looking forward to it. I have loved everything that I have read by Guy Gavriel Kay so far, and I think that this one is going to be great. That's all the books that I have a physical copy for right now. I do have a couple that I have also picked up on the e-library. And the first one of those is The Curse of Challan by Lois McMaster Bejeweled. I always forget like exactly how to say her name, or which one I'm going to put in the right order, but I believe that is the correct way. And this will be my first book by her. This book is about, and again, like, this is just me pulling at the recesses of my memory here, but I think it's about a servant who comes to either tutor or care for a princess in a castle, I think. And then obviously there's political intrigue and those sorts of things that are happening in the background. To be honest, I have read Jake's review of this book, or at least the first like paragraph of the review. I wasn't sure if there was any spoilers, but from the couple of lines that I saw of his 5-star reviews, I have high hopes for this book. He said that it was a fantasy standalone, which is great, and that there was really intricate character work, which is great, and that the writing kind of reminded him of Robin Hobb, which is great. I love all of those 3 things, and if those things ring true for me as well, then I imagine that this will also be a 5-star read for me. I love having more standalones to read. It's always great when you can get the full story in one book and I don't have to open up a giant series. Hello, Shadow of the Act and your 10-book series that I'm now starting at the beginning of the year. But I think that this one's going to be really good as well. I've been wanting to read more of those kind of classic female fantasy authors. I can't believe I've never read anything by Bujold before, so looking forward to making this my first selection from her bibliography. And then the only book that I have not talked about yet, I have it on like a little post-it here, is The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. So this is the last selection for the month, and this is one of Ursula K. Le Guin's works of sci-fi. I have only read by Ursula K. Le Guin so far. I have read the first Earthsea book, and then the year before last. Gosh, the years just like blend together. I think it was the year before last. I read The Lathe of Heaven, which was one of her sci-fi works, and I really enjoyed it. It was a very short book, but a lot to think about. Very interesting concept. The Dispossessed, I believe, is a dystopian novel, and I think it follows a physicist who is living on a moon and then goes off to visit the closest planet, or the planet that the moon is associated with, and this is the dystopian society. I think. I try not to read a lot about the books that I'm going to get into because I like being surprised. I like seeing things unfold, and specifically in some classic works of fantasy and sci-fi, I feel like the back blurb, like the little summary, gives you too much information, and I get spoiled on things that I don't want to be spoiled for. So it makes for a poor quality TBR video, and I apologize, but it makes for a better reading experience for me. So sorry for prioritizing that over your viewing pleasure for this TBR, but I am looking forward to reading The Dispossessed. It's classic sci-fi. That's what you need to know. Classic sci-fi, Ursula K. Le Guin. Hopefully in my February wrap-up / the video I make with Jake and Kyle, I'll be able to let you know if it is worth your time and how good it is. This is another one that Jake gave a 5-star review to. So as I was looking up these books when Jake and Kyle told me to read them, I was like, oh yes, these are all books that Jake has given 5 stars. So hopefully I will find that mine and Jake's reading tastes overlap, and that I will also give all of these books 5 stars. But that is it. That is my February TBR. I'm super excited to read all of these books. It's always fun to read books that your friends pick out for you because they hopefully have a good handle on your reading taste, but will also push you to read things that you may not have had on your immediate TBR. So it makes for an exciting time. And if you love them, it's a great discussion. And if you hate them, it's also a great discussion. So it should be fun at the end of the month regardless. But please let me know what you are reading in February. I would love to hear all about it, and I will see you with another video soon. Bye!